Thank you, General Schwartz. Good morning. I love seeing the smiles, can I say, when we're here in person. It's such a treat. Couple other things. I love General Schwartz because he said one day maybe a contracting officer is going to lead the United States Air Force. I thought he had great foresight. I don't know when that's going to be, but anybody who says that's got to be a good guy. And I'm going to tell you, I have an affinity for the test community. My husband is a test pilot, and I spent a lot of time at Eglin Air Force Base and was the Air Base Wing Commander out at Edwards. So I have quite a fascination with what's going on in the test community, but I will also say that having had the opportunity to serve on this study that I'm going to share with you today, it opened my eyes about how important data is. It's something that we've pushed even at Texas Tech based on some of this experience, is realizing that data is important. And some of us who grew up learning bar charts and pie charts, guess what? Data's a lot different and has a lot different capabilities for visualizing what that data can tell us. And it's just not one stream of data that informs us, it's layers of data that can inform us over time. And that's a whole new conversation and lexicon that I never understood until I had a chance to learn more about it through this study. So this study actually began by Mark Crisco, who participated in a National Academy study under the Mathematics Division that explored the concept of data science. And as he participated in that particular study, he learned that, you know what, we need to pay attention to this for our defense acquisition workforce. What does that look like? And he came back to the National Academies and said, can you do a study that helps us understand what do we know, what don't we know, and where should we go when it comes to our acquisition workforce associated with data. So it was a privilege to have the opportunity. I got somehow tapped for this as one of the acquisition representatives to this incredibly august body. When Mark got together with the National Academies, I'm sorry, I'm getting used to controlling things myself here. But maybe I don't, oh wait. I got to push the right button. So, as he worked with the National Academies, this is the statement of tasks that was that came out of that. It's let's take a look at what's going on in data science. Can data science improve our acquisition process? Can it? What are the foundational understanding and skills that we should develop broadly across our acquisition professionals? What are the characteristics and portfolio of skills of successful data science teams? And that's an important part because just like acquisition is a team sport, data science is a team sport too. And what data science training education models exist that we can steal from to borrow and bring in from other government organizations or from the corporate environment. They assembled an incredible team. I was the least skilled of any of the people on this team, I will tell you. My co-chair was Dr. Rebecca Nugent out of Carnegie Mellon. If you'll take a look at just the list of talent and where they came from, Phil Anton is a DOD guy, works at Stevens Institute now. Dr. Stephen Forrest, University of Michigan, he invented OLED technology, which is making the most awesome televisions if you've ever seen that. Christine Fox, who is an incredible talent at Johns Hopkins, Melvin Greer from Intel, and Peter Levine, an IDA guy. You may know him, but my favorite is sitting in the room with me, Dr. Allison Wilson. She's here, so if you have any questions as a result of our studies, Allison, raise your hand so everybody knows where you are. She's here so you can pick her brain about what we actually did as we went through this study. In the end, what we figured out is there's a lot that we need to understand about some basic assumptions. And we learned that, in a sense, data is a strategic asset. It's something we need to understand, we need to handle it correctly, and we need to protect that data. It's a strategic asset for all of us. An effective use of data science is going to continue to strengthen our defense acquisition process. And the reason I say that, it's going to continue because DoD has recognized data is important, but it's been a struggle to make that, to have it, and help it make it happen. You look at some examples. CAPE has used data for a long time to help us facilitate and petition with Congress to get multi-year contracting agreements. The Air Force in category management has done data analysis in different categories of spend, thinking differently about how we use data to inform our decision processes about what we buy and how we buy it. And in that process has saved multi-billion dollars just by thinking differently and reading the data and understanding it to go forward. The test community has used data for years. This is nothing new to you, but the concept and the tools are constantly evolving. And it's now not just you who are understanding data, it's your bosses who are starting to understand it better and want and expect more from you. And so I'm going to encourage you to do that as you go forward. So those are the basic assumptions that we went forward with. This is the other basic assumption, that this is the definition of data science. And what we learned in this process is there isn't a standard definition of data science. So that we could have a basic foundation for doing our assessment. This is the definition that we chose to use for data science. It is the science and technology of extracting value from data, and is characterized by data lifecycle. And this is the data lifecycle that's demonstrated up here in the charts. You'll probably have seen those terms regularly, beginning with what question do you want answered? And how do you define that question? All the way around. But what I want you to pay attention to is look what's in the center of that circle. It's all about people. Managing data starts and ends with the people that are responsible for making the decisions, creating it, curating it, protecting it, ensuring that we are careful in privacy and ethical use and security implications of employing and using data. In the center of that is the people, and they're the ones that will make the decisions about where we go in that life cycle, and you can go backwards and forwards when it comes to using data. So that's another basic assumption that we had as we went forward in our study. In the end, our report came out with 5 basic themes. These are those 5 themes. Now I'm going to go into detail on each of those, and I'm going to show you how to translate each of the slides so you can notice which theme I'm talking about at this different time. So let me go into the first one. The first theme, now look on the chart up in the upper left-hand, indicates what the theme is for the recommendations that we came out of. So in this case, we need to continue improving defense acquisition and data science. It's been improving, it's still improving. If you look at what's going on in DoD, they are again reorganizing the CIO, DoD, and our artificial intelligence. They're again reorganizing it. We still are evolving in this process. So the key is continue to stay alert, stay aware, pay attention to what's going on. And the recommendations out of this particular theme are that the DoD and congressional leaders and stakeholders should promote cultural change. It's got to start with cultural change, and that means the tone at the top. Data isn't going to be important, and it's not going to continue to be important, and you're not going to have the resources you need unless culturally you make that shift, and it starts with the tone at the top. Does your leadership support it? Because that translates by resources, right? Are you getting the resources you need? Is that important for your cultural shift as you're going forward? And it's not just a tone at the top, it's all the way through, because everybody touches data. Think about it. In my environment in contracting, inputting into a contract acquisition system, if my data system won't receive what I need to put in, then I'm going to hand jam bad data just to get the system to work. So it starts with whatever you're designing for receiving your data to the person who's doing the initial entry in data. Everybody touches data in some way or another. They just might not realize how important their role is in that process. So it's a cultural shift that everybody has to understand, value, and appreciate data. And the other recommendation is that DoD should continue to seek improvements in data use by addressing shortfalls in data collection, its curation, management, and the sharing of that particular data. It's something that we're always going to continue in that process. Now, the second theme is the one thing I do want to also say about in this environment. When we find these issues and make these recommendations, DoD is not alone in this process. This is a corporate issue. Companies struggle with this too, and so do other federal agencies. It's not new. We all struggle with the tone at the top. We all struggle with valuing data all the way down the chain. That is a common issue. It's so new, but it's so important that we've got to learn how to get it right. So we'll continue working on that. Now, our second theme is opportunities exist to improve. So obviously, we do have opportunities that we can improve our workforce abilities across the entire data lifecycle. So what does that look like? In our findings, we found that data science is an inherently collaborative field in which success requires cooperation, communication, and coordination. So just like in the acquisition community, it's really good when everybody's talking together and they're singing off the same sheet of music, whether that's your contracting, your program, your testers, your engineers. When everybody's talking together, we perform at a higher level. And that's true for data science too. So using data, everybody talking together is really important. And and we'll talk about some of the different things in data science, because understanding those different skills and responsibilities and managing data is really is important for facilitating that collaborative behaviors that really will make it work well. So the recommendation out of understanding that collaborative nature is that DoD should prioritize the defense acquisition workforce for a data science mindset where they realize that they somehow touch on data even if they don't know, or they could use data in ways they never envisioned because of the new tools that are in. Understand what skill sets are needed to do and work and operate in the data science environment. And 3, the tool sets that are available now. As I mentioned, it's not just a single spreadsheet and bar charts anymore. It's multitudes of data that you can pull together and layer to tell you a story you never thought you would ever understand. So what does that look like and how can we go on? So staying plugged into it is going to be really important. Now, the third theme then is data literacy skills are important throughout the acquisition workforce. So it's not just testers who need data. It goes all the way from the contracting team to the program team to your program manager to the engineers that need some form of data literacy. So the recommendation is that DoD components look for a way to ensure that all members of their acquisition workforce and its leadership eventually have what's we call data literacy. So what is data literacy? I have to put my glasses on to read this, but I think this is the other thing we discovered. There's a huge debate on what data literacy might be. And so that we had a common understanding of what that is. This is how we defined data literacy going forward. While specific outcomes are being updated and refined, data literacy for many undergraduate students includes an understanding of data lifecycle and how it works, data storytelling and communication, and an ability to recognize matters of ethics, privacy, and security. So those are the 3 things we think everybody in the acquisition workforce needs to understand, because you don't want people tapping into data they shouldn't have access to, but they should have access to data that they need for the job that they're doing. So how do we create that expertise, that openness, and those expectations as we go across it? Now, executing the data lifecycle that I shared with you earlier requires teams of data engineers, data scientists, data analysts, data users, domain experts, and leaders and decision makers. And some of those are new terms you might not have heard before. And quite frankly, often our debate occurred in our discussions that, well, we already do all this, and I'm an analyst, but it's not the analyst definition per the data scientists who are learning in school these days, right? So as you start building your data science teams, having those conversations and having a clear understanding of who's doing what, who's doing it where, and participating as a team is going to be really important to facilitate and use data in the best possible way. Now, when you look in the acquisition community and you look at how it's all put together, look across the phases in the data life cycle. We're going to look at that in just a minute. Advanced capabilities is our 4th theme, advanced capabilities can improve data use and acquisition. So these are the conversations that we have in data scientists and specialists. So our finding was that data scientists are actually specialists with advanced skills in data collection, thinking about how do you collect data, what does it look like, shaping it, curating that data, management of the data, analysis of the data, and then visualizing it. Data scientist, that term specifically, is a unique term for someone who has the skills that pulls all of this together and essentially becomes like a program manager for the data team, for the data science team, that multifunctional team that goes on. And in the end, managing data science project uses strategies and approaches for leading a collaborative, cross-functional technical team. Very much like our mixed acquisition teams as we operate in our defense environment. So this is what it might look like. Across the top, you see your data lifecycle. Down on the right-hand side of your matrix here are the different roles that will be on a data science team and kind of where they fit and where they might have their most presence and be most important in the collaborative process for managing data and the data lifecycle. For example, data engineers are going to be primarily involved. They're kind of the implementation specialists in defining, coordinating, generating, collecting, curating, and managing the data. They build the structure that helps us manage that data and understand it. A data scientist then bridges all the way across. Let's look down at the domain experts. You guys would be test domain experts, you see. You understand what it takes to do testing in our defense community or otherwise. You then bring that insight into testing. What does it look like? What does the data need to say? How do you need it and how do you use it? So then you shape. But this is kind of the structure that we found was incredibly useful for that multifunctional team that's important for our data science in the Department of Defense. Now, the fifth theme that we ran across was that diverse training models. So this is the last thing. What is data? How do we go about it? What are we doing good in acquisition and Defense Department? What are we not quite doing as well? And in the end, what are some training opportunities that are out there? So the last theme was diverse training models can increase data capabilities and outcomes. And our recommendation is that institutions that provide training for defense acquisition professionals should ensure the courses integrate realistic data. When we went out and talked with a number of the defense schools that already do some kind of data training, data analytic training, we found that their data pools were kind of canned sets of data. And the recommendation is in the academic environment, they're not. They're using really data. And what's important about that is data's messy. And people need to understand that data's messy and what it takes to go in and clean up that data and work that data, curate that data, and manage that data to make it something that's going to be useful for you going forward. So to learn how to manage data is important to use good and realistic data in that process. Our next recommendation is that the defense acquisition system should continue to leverage and expand the variety of data science training options available both within and outside DoD. And the reason we talked about that is there are programs out there. There are lots of excellent undergraduate and graduate programs that are currently exist in our institutions across the United States. So don't go and recreate what you can tap into. That's how we move faster. If we're going to take this seriously and it's important to us, go take advantage of what's already out there rather than trying to recreate it. At the same time, there are some good programs, the internal programs that Defense Department's already put in place. The different services have already collected programs that you can tap into as well. So realize there's a variety of things. If you don't have to create it, don't. Take advantage of what's already out there. And the other recommendation is new training programs for acquisition leadership and personnel and data use should incorporate assessment and metrics to evaluate their success. So as you tap into the different programs, how are you judging that it's changing behaviors, that it's improving capability? And it's important to understand that all the way across. And then our last, in the diverse recommendation, our last recommendation is that the defense acquisition data strategy should address data governance, the collection, curation, management, and access, the analysis and consumption, as well as the workforce that facilitates these functions and is central to the data lifecycle. So defense acquisition strategy is what we loved about what was going on while we were actually even collecting data and writing a report, is that DoD was acting on so many of the things that we had already discussed with them and shared with you in the process. And actually right parallel to our recommendations was that the ANS data strategy was being written and released about the same time as our report was coming out. So it's OBE, but I would say it's not OBE because we still have opportunities. And I think that the key thing is, are we making that cultural shift? Are you getting the dedicated resources? Are you getting the funding to help facilitate what you need to do in terms of data science? I have a few more minutes. That's the conclusion of our study. There's a lot more details. There's in the report itself, there are lists of the education programs and opportunities that are out there. There's other layers of stories that we learned in our processes associated with data science. So I am happy to answer any questions that you might have right now. And if I don't know the answer, I have Allison in the room here with me, who I will turn to and gladly give her the floor. So. Okay. Yes, sir. So I will be candid. Our report ended, and the result of the study is at the end. So from the study perspective, we haven't followed that. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. So personally, I think what I look for is an increasing demand by leadership to use data to inform my decisions. Are you bringing data to show me that that your recommendation is a sound recommendation, and that data demonstrates it? And that's the beginning of the cultural shift. I think the other thing is, are people making decisions to invest in the data collection, standardize whatever they can on data language? Are you moving in that direction so that people learn and can share data across Department of Defense? Or are we still stovepiping? There's a lot of stovepiping that still exists, and people protect their data for whatever reason. Can we share more out in the fields that help us as a defense department make better decisions and move more quickly? Does that make sense? That's what I personally would hope to see over time. The stovepipes kill us. That's exactly what happened in CAPE. I mean, you couldn't get data from contractors, and quite frankly, that data is our data. I mean, when they're collecting data off of the data systems we're hiring them to do for us, I'm pretty sure that's our data. I should say our. I'm not our anymore, but it's hard to take off the uniform. So that is one of the big things. That's one of the big rocks we still are challenged to overcome. I saw, yes, sir. Yes. I don't know if you were able to hear the question, but I'm going to repeat it because it's really, really important. And remember, one of our recommendations and finding is it all starts with the tone at the top, right? And people ask for data, but they don't understand how hard it is to get that data because we haven't historically had good data systems, quality data systems that we've continued to collect that are delivering meaningful data. And they ask for data, but they have no sense that we have no tools out there to produce that data and to deliver a data to inform a decision. It's a hand jam project that takes hours, days, months to generate. And it wouldn't have to if we could invest in the process. So yes, the cultural issue begins at the top. And I will tell you quite candidly, when we were doing our survey of educational programs, one of the questions we had is what executive level introduction programs do you have for leadership, people who are in senior leadership roles, so that we can help them understand how hard this is. If they don't have the cover and they don't establish the priorities and they don't help get funds to support the type of data analytics you need to do, how do you move this forward? So your question is right on. It absolutely starts at the cultural, at the top level, and that was one of our recommendations to DoD is you've got to create that learning opportunity throughout the acquisition workforce. It's not just those of you who have the privilege of working with data and understanding data and looking at data and making informed decisions. It's the leadership who might not really understand how hard it is to get the data, and they need to understand that. And they need to understand they need to run interference for you in the process for getting that type of information. I'll tell you, I've had the opportunity recently to sit on the Air Force Studies Board, and we've had exactly those conversations about, for whatever reason, our information systems, our ERPs, our data systems, they are what gets funded with leftover funds at the end of the fiscal year. And that's not what it should be. Data and managing and understanding data is a utility in today's environment. And until we learn and appreciate and fund that accordingly, it's still going to be a hand jam process for many of us as we go forward. So that's a good question. Yes, sir. Oh, look at there.
I think we have a microphone now. Hi, Matthew Avery from IDA. One of the things that we've explored internally is ways to measure our progress at maturing our data capabilities. And there's models out there in the commercial world, like the data management maturity model and such. And those haven't always aligned great with our ability to measure our own progress. Did you guys explore any tools or methods for measuring progress at improving data science skills within the workforce or the infrastructure or any sort of maturity models along those lines?
No, our last recommendation said you need to do that. This 6.3 says, listen, you've got to create your metrics to demonstrate. So sadly, no, we did not go that next layer. But that would be a great study for IDA to take on and offer perhaps to the Defense Department consistent with this recommendation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
I'll just be loud. So my question is kind of the inverse of one of the previous questions. Do you feel that universities are preparing the young professionals to come in with a little bit more data savvy? Do you feel that they're creating professionals with more understanding of data? And if they aren't, do you have any recommendations for that?
So that's an excellent question. And the question was, do you feel like, or did you find that the universities are preparing their graduates to be more sensitive to data? And the answer is yes. We found that increasingly they were and are developing students that better understand data. But what's important is there are different definitions and skill sets that are being trained and developed into those students that aren't consistent. So a data science graduate from one university may not have the same skill sets that a data science graduate from another university will have. So as you have those conversations, as you hire that young talent, having that type of conversation about, talk to me about what you understand about a data lifecycle, and how you as a data scientist are responsible, that would be a good discussion to have with a young person. I will say, I was at General Schwartz mentioned that I am on an advisory council for my business school at Texas Tech. And one of the things they've put in is a data science program in the business school. And the students that are coming out of that are getting hundreds of offers because there's such a demand for people who understand data. And there's just not enough of them coming out. So the schools are putting them in place. Again, they have different skills, so be cognizant of that. And to be fair, even within the defense acquisition community, if you understand what the definition in the context of this study, and that's why we defined everything in the study so that you understood that as a reference. There are people who have those skills in the defense workforce. They're just not called by that name. So that's why we wanted to make it clear in this study, this is how we're going to define this skill set. You may have it under a different title, but pull that type of talent and that type of skill set together in your collaborative team, and it will help accelerate your data science performance. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Alex Ham. I work on the Joint Staff at J3 as a data scientist. Question I have for you, ma'am, if you could describe maybe the aha moment that you had as someone who's serving in a position of leadership, because just as you allude to working in the Defense Department, trying to make that cultural shift, finding leadership or leaders that it's not that they don't believe me when I present things that are related to data science and the importance of data. It's just that they're not convinced, that we don't have time for that. And I'm just wondering what sort of aha moment did you have as someone in a position of leadership that said, oh, this is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really good question. I'll take you back to my time when I was the PEO for services acquisition, and many of you know that we probably spend over half of our DoD budget in services acquisition, and that covers a whole lot of different types of responsibilities, for everything from your information technology services stuff to your advisory services to things like maintenance on aircraft and training. Those are all services. Now, how do you get a handle on where those dollars are being spent and how they're being spent? And we didn't have a system that I could just extract that data from. DoD ran special data analytics and would hand them to me once a year. Once a year. That's nuts. How do I get a handle on where that's going? And I'm going, I can't be effective managing this huge portfolio if I don't have insight on what's going on across. So I learned that when I was trying to just be a boss. And I can't imagine portfolio managers running, fighter aircraft or tanks, and you have no data insight. So for me, it became really personal. I will say that is a chronic issue. You are not alone, and it's not just the Department of Defense who struggles with leadership that values data and data input. Now, to be fair, I would just offer this part too. Sometimes data is going to tell you one thing, and that's good, but there are other extenuating circumstances that aren't data related that drive or could influence a decision as well. Whether it's a political decision, think about it. There's a lot of pressures on leaders making decisions, and that's not all good. But the best thing that you can do is make sure that your data is as clean as possible so that it consistently comes out and it's not changing every single time you turn around and the data says something different every time, because you lose credibility when your data says something different every time and it's the same database. You should be able to show some kind of trends, unless you can demonstrate that you have this new tool that is slicing the data in a different way, and you understand that well enough to explain it. And those are all the layers of that. I mean, that I'm the dead person when it comes to trying to understand data, but it's super important. And I'm going to depend on more recent graduates and the techno geeks among you to help me understand where it comes. General Schwartz, yes, sir.
I just wanted to reinforce a point you made, Wendy. There were many times during my prior life when, with my civilian leadership, we made choices that were based more on instinct than it was on data. Why? Because either the data wasn't there or it wasn't easily understood or what have you. And so I think the message to all of you, and the point you made, Wendy, that there are all kinds of pressures. Not every decision is an objective one.
That's right.
It is true in government, as many of you know. But the reality is that being able to present data-driven analysis as one component of a decision-making process is fundamental to good government. That's what you all do. It's vital. You may not win the argument in every case, but it's the right thing.
I agree 100. Thank you so much, sir. But I agree with that 100%. Data is critical for us. Understanding it is really important. Overcoming a desire to protect what you have and not sharing what you have is something we all need to get better, even across services. When you think about it, this is one thing that just killed me when I was in the acquisition realm. I saw in some of our offices, literally, one program was sitting across the hallway from another program. They were literally both doing proposal analyses, negotiating against the same team in the contractor that they were dealing with, and had never talked to each other. Think about that. Think about that. And oh, by the way, the Navy had a third program that they had just finished negotiating that had with that same contractor team, and nobody was extracting and sharing data and insights that they had learned. So imagine how difficult that is to be managed by a contractor, and that contractor knows more about where the weaknesses are in your negotiation position than you have because you haven't talked to each other. We've got to get over that. And I pulled both of those teams into the room together and brought the Navy team in to talk about what was going on and what they're seeing in their negotiation process so that they could together have a much more intelligent conversation and not give away things that others had been able to garner in that negotiation process. That's what data does for us. If we look at it objectively and get past things, self-protectionism, we become a better, stronger department. Yes, Kelly.
Hello. I wanted to mention we have a large Zoom audience who is also listening
Oh,
intently. And I wanted
great.
to
Thank
read
you.
one more question from
Okay.
the Zoom chat,
Yeah,
if you
thank
don't
you.
mind. So this is from Tiana Freericks. The term data casts a broad net.
Yes.
Raw combat system data, processed combat system data, observer notes, metrics, metadata, and so on. Is there a specific type of data we have in mind when we talk about it in this context?
No. Data, it's a big animal. So that's why coming up with a common language and understanding how and where it needs to be managed, you all understand this better than I do. It's huge, but it is what our future is, and we need to learn how to manage it and capture it, use it well, and be consistent and share. And you can even protect your data that may be specific on special programs because it's in a blind pool. So why can't we share that information and make things better and smarter? So anyway, over to you. Those are like my personal comments at the end, so please forgive me. You know, the study is very specific. But we did talk a lot about cultural shifts, and it starts at the top. And helping your bosses understand your data means you may have to have a little bit more patience, but also realize there are a lot of other external pressures as they make data-informed decisions. And we say data-informed, not data-driven. And that was very careful. We used that term very carefully through the report. Data-informed is what your objective is, because sometimes leaders have other factors that they also need to incorporate in their decision-making processes. But our job is to deliver the best data-informed, to inform with the best data that we can pull together for our leadership. So thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy your workshop over the next 2 more days. And I look forward to hearing the questions that you ask Allison over the next 2 days. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time.